goes on media. This is Coming Out Stories. It's a podcast about one of the most important conversations of your life. I'm Emma Goswell. Time now to hear from stand-up comedian Kate McCabe. I was gobsmacked when she told me who she chose to first come out to.
I think it's interesting. Sometimes as a lesbian or a gay person or somebody who identifies somewhere else on the sexuality spectrum, you might get asked the question of like, when did you know you were gay? But that's different than like, when did you feel different? Or when you felt attraction to the same sex. I remember feeling like, in perhaps like a non-sexualized way, drawn to women very early on. Like when I was like in, I don't know, like second grade or something, having like little tiny crushes on female teachers.
Okay.
But then I think feeling probably like different than other girls more around like when I was like 12, 13, 14, when you actually are starting to go through puberty and you see girls, you know, gravitating towards boys, trying to get their attention and flirty with them. You know, when my female friends were all picking their favorite members of New Kids on the Block and I was scrambling to make up some random attraction to one of them.
That's really sort of dated you in a certain decade there, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I'm old.
New Kids on the Block, fabulous. So tell us where you were growing up then.
Okay, so I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is on the Great Lakes in America.
Wonderful. And was that a great place to grow up being a lesbian?
I wouldn't call Erie, Pennsylvania like a hyper-progressive city. I would describe it as very Americana. Traditionally more of like a blue-collar type background, although there were, you know, lots of white-collar workers there as well. You know how like Detroit has the reputation of sort of like a factory city that is maybe like a little rundown? Erie's got a little bit of that spirit as well. They're both Great Lakes cities, and it's that sort of like a slightly depressed stuff, although there's efforts now for rebirth.
But what sort of messages were you getting about the fact that, you know, you knew that you were a lesbian or you knew you were different? What sort of messages were you getting about that in the playground or in the place where you lived?
Oh, deep, dark ones. I grew up Catholic and I went to Catholic school. So especially in the 80s and 90s, you know, there wasn't much progressivism in my Catholic community in Erie, Pennsylvania. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, it would have been, God, you'd go to hell for masturbating. So you could picture masturbating to a female, you know, is twice as bad. So as far as like commentary from other people, I went to a Catholic girls' school, so it was interesting. It was sort of like that type of, that teacher's a les, you know, like that sort of negativity. Like, I bet Sister so-and-so was a lesbian, or I bet Mrs. So-and-so is gay. That sort of like, negative, lesbians gross. Not necessarily directed squarely at me. I was a funny girl in high school. Like, I cracked jokes. I was like class clown, which I think is a classic gay self-preservation maneuver.
Funny enough, I've got a lot of comedians on this podcast.
Yeah, funny that.
It is funny that, isn't it? I never really thought about it like that, but you're right.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a type of martial art.
So you mentioned that obviously you felt different when you were a lot younger, but when was the first time you sort of realised it was a sexual thing as well?
So when I was going through puberty, I had a kind of sexualized dream about a woman that I knew. And I told my mom pretty urgently because I was weirded out. And I must have been like 12 or 13.
Wow.
And I said, hey, I had a dream that was like this and blah, blah, blah. And my mom is so lovely. She just calmed me down. It was like, look, you're going through puberty right now, so you're going to think all sorts of weird things. Do not bother thinking about this for another second. All kinds of bizarre thoughts are going to pop into your head. See you later.
Yeah, don't bother me with your teenage stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really, I was able to sort of, via this kind of like safe mode of thinking, just think like, I'm going through puberty. Just because I'm fantasizing about women doesn't mean I'm gay. It's just that my hormones are going bonkers, and eventually they'll settle on men.
So that's what you told yourself?
Yeah, that was my logic.
And was that because of what you're being told at school and by your mum then, you think?
Yeah, I mean, at school, it's not like I'd been given any sort of lesson about like sexuality and how it materializes. I think mostly that little blanket of cover that had been provided by my mom. And by the way, like not like in a negative way. She was just trying to make me feel better. And I don't think she thought I was gay. I don't think, legit, I don't think she thought like, oh, my daughter's gay, I'm going to give her a cover. I do think she just believed that this was sort of like,
well, it sounds like you were genuinely confused at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think either of us knew that like that it wouldn't transfer over to men. You know, like I never had sex dreams about men, but that was also not a detail that I told my mom.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So you carried on having these sort of fantasies and not really knowing what your sexuality was or really understanding it was. Was there a sort of moment where you went, oh, hang on, the dots are joining up here. I think I might be gay.
Yeah, I finally admitted it to myself when I was in university. So I went to university in New York City, which is a great playground for a gay kid coming out. And I really was, boy, did homosexuality need to really work hard with me. Because like I stayed in the closet for America has 4 years of university for a degree. I was in the closet for 3 of them. Kate. In New York City with a gay best friend.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh my God. And they've got an amazing club there called the Clit Club. Do you know about this?
I do know the Clit Club and Meow Mix, R.I.P. Meow Mix.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame. What a waste.
That's it. It was sort of like there I was in like the most bountiful place on earth for being a young lesbian and, doing nothing about it. But I finally came out the summer between my third and my final year. So I went and saw the movie Bound with Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly.
I think most lesbians our age have watched Bound.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, it should be sort of prescribed, really, shouldn't it? It's sort of something that you need to watch as part of your coming to terms.
Maybe even like as a test. Like, do you think you are? Watch this. If this doesn't pull you screaming out of the closet, then you're probably not gay. So yeah, I watched that, and then it's like, I had like several fever dreams after that. And then the first person I actually came out to, besides myself, a priest.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
And I went to, so I still, growing up Catholic, I was still trying to live who I was in New York City. I didn't want to go to New York City and become like a completely different person. So I was still going to church every Sunday morning. And I'm not an idiot. Like, I went to a church in a very progressive neighborhood. So this was not a very hellfire and brimstone brand of Catholicism. This was a nicer sort of like reformed, liberal branch of Catholicism. And it was a church in Chelsea, which historically is a pretty gay neighborhood in New York City. And I went to a confessional, and, the priest is behind the thing. And I just say, oh God, I think I might be gay.
And they can't see you, of course, can they?
They can't see you, and technically, they're not really allowed to be like, cool, regardless of their own feelings. They've got to give sort of like what the Pope prescribes as how to deal with these situations. So I had quite fearful at this point, really expecting that the priest is going to tell me that like my soul needs to be cleansed and that like I need to do this, that, and the other thing, and that it's wrong. But instead, and I really thank God that like I was at this point in my life, I was in New York City, I was in a church in Chelsea. He said, well, okay, all right, well, I'm supposed to say some things, and I want to know. Let's just talk a little bit more about this. Have you acted on your gay feelings? And I said, well, no, I hadn't, because I'm not very cool.
I've been to watch the film Bound and had unnatural thoughts.
Exactly. And he said, okay, well, what I'm going to say to you, technically this isn't the line that I'm supposed to use, but I would say in your gay relationships, treat your partners like I would ask you to if you were straight. As in, like, basically, I think what his advice was like, don't go out and be a gay hooker.
Okay.
Like, just like if you're going to, fall in love with someone, like respect them and respect yourself, and et cetera, et cetera. And so sort of gave me like a very cautious, like, it's okay. Basically, just be a good gay Catholic in your relationships.
And that's exactly what you needed to hear, probably.
100%.
Probably as good as you were going to get from a Catholic priest.
Yeah, I think, and this is it, I think people's experiences with religion vary greatly depending on where they are in the world. What is kind of coming out of the church in that moment in time. Again, I think, geographically, I was just luckier than 90% of my gay friends.
So how did that make you feel then? Did you think, oh, actually, it is okay to be gay? Or were you still a bit sort of, I'm still going to stay in the closet, this is still not great with God? How did you feel after that?
Well, it was a massive relief. So someone who felt pressure from religion growing up Catholic, it was a massive relief to feel and understand that I'm not crazy. There are people in the world, even in religion, that like don't think I'm going to burn in hell for just basically living my truth. And then it made me consider, who am I going to tell next?
Well, you had a gay best friend. How come they weren't first?
He was second. Yeah.
He was second.
Exactly. And even then, it took me like a few days to sort of like, okay, how do I want to talk about this? And what's the order of people I'm going to tell? I remember, because there's a line in Bound where Joe Pantaleone goes, and you can swear on this podcast, right?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Fuck it.
Joe Pantaleone goes, fucking queers, you make me sick. Right. And I remember being with my best friend, the gay best friend, Ari, and his boyfriend at the time, Joe. And this was after I came out to the priest, but before I came out to them. And we were watching, I think, Bound on video or something. And I look over at them and I go, fucking queers, you make me sick. And they were like, Katie. And I was like, I'm allowed to say it. And then, like, came out to Ari, like, shortly after that.
I'm allowed to say it because I'm also a fucking queer.
I felt like I could own it, and that's what made it okay.
And what did they say?
Ari was very pleased for me. I think, one of the people that maybe, like, thought probably she is, but, you can't force someone out of the closet. So he was my comfort in that summer, And when I went home and I told my mom, she was a lot better than I thought she would be.
Because you really built up to that then, didn't you, really, to tell your mum?
Yeah. My parents were divorced, and so I did tell my dad shortly after my mum. But my dad had always been sort of like a liberal, hippie kind of thinker. I guess I had less worry because my mom was the religious one in the family.
Okay.
As opposed to my dad, who was sort of anti-religious.
And did those stereotypes work out? Was your dad cool?
Yeah, my dad was very cool. He was like, a week into it, he was like, well, okay, here's some books I've read. This is completely queer, the encyclopedia from A to Z, and Chastity Bono's autobiography. And I was like, okay, thanks, Dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and, my mom wound up just being sort of like what I would call a good kind of Christian who,
How did the convoy go with your mum? Can you remember?
Yeah, we went to Pizza Hut.
Okay.
Before I went to Pizza Hut, I told her at the kitchen table, I sat her down, and I asked her the question I think that a lot of gay people want to know, which is like, I think I phrased it to her, did you ever think that maybe I might be gay? Like, I wanted to know what she was thinking about my lack of boyfriends, my lack of expressed sexuality. And she said something like, well, I thought it might be a possibility, but I would never want to vocalize that because I don't know. And I said, I wish you could have just asked. I wish you would have just asked me. And she, said, well, it's okay. And then she took me to Pizza Hut so that I could have a good cry over some pizza.
So you were more emotional than she was, were you?
Yeah, I was. My mom's a good mom. She knows, she's always been a good support to both me and my sister. And, it wasn't about her. It was about me, so she never took the position of sort of like, what did I do? Or where did this come from? She never centered herself in the conversation. The closest she ever got was trying to relate to it by saying like, it's just interesting. I guess I just can't picture it. But I remember having a lot of deep respect for the nuns at my Catholic school, and I was like, well, it's not the same. I'm like, it's definitely not the same, Mom, and that's your kink and not mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I love that way of rephrasing it then. Have you ever thought that I might be gay?
Yeah.
Because I've spoken to a lot of people whose mothers always know. So as soon as they tell them, they go, like, oh my, the same problem you had, like, if you thought it, why did you never say it?
Yeah, like it took all this sort of like mental and emotional labor for me to push it out of my face. Whereas I guess I felt like if she would have asked me, it would have been easier. But that's the shoe on the other foot. You never know if at like 16, if she'd asked me, if that would have pushed me further in. If I would have been like, what? No, I'm going to go out and get a boyfriend right now. You're a jerk.
Because you obviously weren't ready. You obviously waited till you were sort of in your early 20s.
Yeah, I was 20 years old. Yeah.
So you'd done a few years of uni.
Yeah.
And then you were ready. So you can't rush these things, I think. Can you really?
No. And again, I think geographically, that had a lot to, I probably would have stayed in the closet if I had gone to a different university, like something more rural or smaller town. Probably would have stayed in the closet even longer.
Well, I have spoken to people on this podcast who have been thrown out of university in America because they're religious colleges, and that is legal in your previous country.
Yeah, it is. I think, the impact that religion has on American freedom is a lot greater than people think because, we're voting right now on whether you can fire an LGBT person from work constitutionally. constitutionally speaking. So, and that has to do with religion. It's about whether if it is a religious prerogative or priority, can they do it? And it's like, ooh, okay, boy, this isn't how religion is supposed to be applied in people's lives.
Was that part of your thinking of moving to the UK, or did you fall for a girl and end
Fall
up
for a girl,
Of
that
course.
story. Yeah, I got dragged over here because my wife is Scottish.
Oh, so you had a very happy ending then in terms of your love life.
Yeah, I was doing stand-up in New York City, and my wife was sort of living there very, temporarily as sort of like a tourist, and saw me do stand-up and bought me a beer. And I'm just really bad at one-night stands. And 18 years later.
You followed it all the way back to the UK.
I did indeed. We tried to make it work in America first, but historically and politically at that time, it was when George Bush II was in office, and with us fighting a war and being awful in other ways, we weren't anywhere near having national gay marriage recognized, which is what you need to sponsor an immigrant. You can't just have it's legal in Vermont. It had to be legal in all of America.
So it was easier for you to come here, and then you got married here first?
So there used to be a visa over here that doesn't exist anymore about sponsoring partners, whether you were gay or straight. And that was my pathway to the UK. Then we got civil partnered here. We had a ceremony in America that didn't have any legal standing.
Okay.
And then America said yes on gay marriage when Obama came into power. And we went and got our papers signed in America. And then England upgraded from civil partnerships to marriage.
Yep.
So then we have basically too many universities. Not universities, anniversaries.
So you basically had some sort of non-binding legal document ceremony in America.
Yeah.
A civil ceremony in the UK.
Yeah.
And a wedding in the UK.
Yeah.
Have you done the wedding in America yet?
So the big ceremony we had in America was like our 10,000 pound affair. You know what I mean? It was like we rented out a hall. We had a meal served to people, and Carrie bought a wedding dress, and so we treated it like our wedding, even though it didn't have legally binding status. But we had the paperwork from the UK for the civil partnership.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And then so you've come here, and you are still a stand-up comedian. You still do that. So do you come out in your comedy? Is it very important for you to talk about your wife and being a lesbian on stage?
Most definitely, because I don't really create many fictions in my stand-up. A lot of mine is either true to life, anecdotal, or observational. I just think I should talk about, as truthfully as I can, my experiences. I even have a joke in my set about it, about look, I always come out with one or two jokes that acknowledge that I'm gay. And it's not necessarily because that's my chosen topic that I want to harp on about. It's because if I didn't, that you as an audience would be distracted. Because I feel like I look gay. And if I don't confirm it, they're going to be like, I'm pretty sure she's gay.
So you're coming out constantly. That's kind of what you have to do as a gay person, though, isn't it, really?
That's absolutely true. I think that is something that gay people do every time they move into a new either circle of friends or a new workplace. You don't get to come out once. You come out, as many times as you meet a new person.
Kate, I had to do it at the doctor's yesterday.
Did you?
Got a new doctor's. Guess what the first question she asked me was?
Could you be pregnant, or have you had any,
Pretty much. What type of contraception are you using?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, being gay and menopausal. How does that work? Anyway, I always like to end with sort of advice for, other people that might be doing it or thinking about it and not had the bravery to do it yet, because it is a big deal, like yourself. You said you did take several years to come to terms with it and vocalise it. What advice would you give to people in that position that you were in, sort of in your late teens, early 20s?
I would say, don't let anyone push you, but I'm on the other side of it now. Go for it. If things do not go according to plan, take advantage of the hundreds of support networks and groups there are out there. Even if you have a bad communication with someone and maybe it doesn't go as well as you want, there's people out there that will help you through it. They'll hold your hand and be your friend.
Absolutely. Unlike when we were coming out and there was no internet or support.
No, exactly.
It's a lot easier to find that help, isn't it, really?
It is. It's there for you. Take advantage of it and come out and enjoy the other side.
And if you're not sure if you're a lesbian or not, perhaps get Bound out on DVD.
Check out Bound. Lately, I've also been, watching Gentleman Jack too many times. So if either of those, watch both. Do yourself a little favor, have a little marathon.
A huge thanks to Kate for sharing quite a unique coming out story. Please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. We'd also love to hear from you on Twitter. You can find us there at Come Out Stories. I'm Emma Goswell, and Coming Out Stories is a What Goes On media production. In the next episode, you're going to hear from Oscar. He grew up in Trinidad and identifies as being trans-masculine but non-binary, and sexuality-wise identifies as being pansexual. Suppressing the urge to transition for 20 years had a huge impact on his mental health.
I just spent a year with a sort of extreme kind of agoraphobia. I'd been really depressed, I'd had lots of mental health issues, and I'd spent about a year on a sofa refusing to leave the flat, and I was basically waiting to die at that point.